Well, internet giants say the web promotes free speech, but that's not always true, even in the USA.
Censorship is on the rise against certain religious beliefs, and some fear the violence we're seeing in the Middle East could fuel a new crackdown on religious speech. Paul Strand has more from Washington.
The violent attacks on U.S. embassies in the Muslim world this week resulted from a chaotic call for restricting speech. Rioting Islamists demanded a film that cast Muhammad in a negative light be banned. Those keeping an eye on the stifling of religious freedom already going on in America worry scenes like this could increase pressure to shut up controversial speech by believers. Their biggest concerns? Access to the internet and the so-called new media companies that control it. Officials at the national religious broadcasters charge web giants like Apple, Google, and Facebook already silence religious speech.
We have continued to see examples of censorship, which we believe we all ought to feel uncomfortable about and find them to be somewhat disturbing.
Partial points to examples of YouTube blocking pro-life videos by Lila Rose and her group Live Action. Those particular videos expose questionable practices and standards at some Planned Parenthood branches. Then came the mysterious shutdown of Governor Mike Huckabee's Facebook page after he started signing up hundreds of thousands of people to support Chick-fil-A and traditional marriage. Facebook called it a mistake, but Huckabee believes it was no accident. One of the first public cases of this kind of censorship resulted from the Manhattan Declaration, organized by Chuck Colson. Apple killed the Declaration's iTunes app because its signers opposed abortion and same-sex marriage. Colby May says it's easy to see why those running the new media would want to shut up controversial speech.
From their perspective as companies, they want to have as less controversy in the public eye as possible. So if they can simply say, let's not talk about those things that create controversy, well, then they're naturally just instinctively going to do it, whether they want to do it with animus or not.
To fight back, the NRB and its allies want this free speech charter for the internet. It calls for the new media's protection of all the speech that flows through cyberspace, just like the First Amendment protects the free speech rights of all Americans.
Whatever the Supreme Court has said about what the First Amendment allows is what you should allow.
The charter declares the only prohibited speech would be the kind that's criminal or violent or obscene.
You can't incite people to violence. You can't communicate obscenity. If the FCC were involved, you can't communicate indecency to children. We're asking the same kind of standard here. Those very limited number of exceptions. Everything else ought to be allowed.
What's good there is to have more speech, not less speech. And don't put yourself in the position of trying to decide whether this viewpoint is acceptable or that viewpoint is acceptable.
What these folks are asking of the new media is that though things like obscenity must be censored, speech, no matter how controversial, is never censored. Paul Strand, CBN News, reporting from the National Press Club.
Well, I certainly believe in free speech, but the problem here is that companies like Facebook and like Apple are private companies and therefore not subject to the First Amendment. The First Amendment just affects government. If these private companies want to limit what's on their website or what's accessible from their various devices, well, they have the right to. When we look at what's going on in the Middle East, though, there's a whole other story where these protesters are literally asking for free speech to stop just because they find it offensive. And that's where you've got to start to draw the line to say, we can't go that route. We respect their viewpoint, and they certainly have plenty of avenues for peaceful protest, and I wish they would start doing some peaceful protests. But as long as you say there's no freedom of speech and no freedom of conscience, and that's exactly what the foreign minister of Israel said this is all about, then we're all in danger of losing our liberty. Lee Webb has the rest of our top stories from the CBN Newsroom. Lee?
And Gordon, related to that, U.S. diplomatic missions in North Africa and the Middle East are on high alert. Violence over an anti-Muslim film produced here in the U.S. continues to spread. More than 10 countries are now joining the protests. In Egypt, police are using tear gas to keep crowds away from the U.S. Embassy compound. The new vigilance comes after a reportedly blunt conversation between President Obama and the new Egyptian president.
I don't think that we would consider them an ally, but we don't consider them an enemy.
The British newspaper The Independent quotes a senior diplomatic source as saying the State Department had credible information 48 hours before mobs attacked the consulate in Benghazi, Libya, and the embassy in Egypt. Still, no warnings were given for diplomats to go on high alert and/or lockdown. The Obama administration denies those reports. The violence in Egypt and Libya is sparking calls to end U.S. funding for those countries. The American Center for Law and Justice says taxpayer dollars should not be given to countries that permit terrorism. Jay Sekulow, the ACLJ, says it's time to bring an end to a foreign policy of appeasement and apologies. Mitt Romney says the Federal Reserve's latest action proves President Obama's economic policies are not working. Fed Chairman Ben Bernanke announced plans to spend $40 billion a month to help boost the weak economy.
Well, what Bernanke's doing is saying that what the president's saying is wrong. The president's saying the economy's making progress, coming back. Bernanke's saying, no, it's not. I got to print more money. I don't think what Bernanke is doing is going to get the economy going.
The Fed plans to buy mortgage-backed securities. Bernanke says he will stick with that plan until the job market shows substantial improvement. He hopes it will make it cheaper for people to borrow and spend. Stocks spiked higher on that news Thursday, but so did gold. That's because investors are concerned the move could boost inflation. State lawmakers in Missouri have passed a law protecting businesses that refuse to provide birth control in their health insurance plans. Those votes in both houses of the legislature were overwhelming and enough to override the governor's veto. Missouri is the first state to pass a measure that rejects President Obama's contraception mandate on religious grounds. The Missouri Catholic Conference, Missouri Right to Life, and other anti-abortion groups champion that measure, Gordon.
Well, it's the first in what I predict will be a series of state revolts against Obamacare and the provisions in the law mandating certain coverage. So this is the first one, and for it to pass through and override a governor's veto, I think is very significant. So we'll be seeing more of this in the months ahead.
Oversized sugary drinks are now banned at restaurants and concession stands in New York City. That ban includes non-diet soda, sweetened teas, or other high-calorie beverages larger than 16 ounces. The city's health board finally passed the ban, saying it's necessary to combat obesity, but critics argue it's nothing more than Big Brother government intrusion. Operation Blessing has partnered with a North Carolina-based food pantry to fill students' backpacks with food as they head back to school. North Carolina has one of the highest rates of hungry children in the country. Teachers say they noticed that some of their students had nothing to eat all weekend, their first meal being breakfast at school Monday morning. You can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at ob.org.